Hello everyone and welcome to yet another, yes, still happening, another episode of the Gaming Aroma podcast, gaming chat fueled by coffee with me, your host, KDB. My weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, sometimes monthly outlet to just rant about games, talk about games, say what I think about games and related stuff. How are you? Hope you're well. It is not Sunday for me. I'm recording this on Saturday because tomorrow I have a very, very busy day. So getting it out of the way now, going to bank it and it will go live into your ears tomorrow morning or Sunday morning or Monday morning, whenever you're listening to this, maybe in the year 2030. Who knows? It is a lovely day today. October is here. Spooky season is here. We are doing some Halloween decorating today. I've actually just put an extra giant pumpkin out on the doorstep. I bought some pumpkins earlier in the week, started to decorate the front of the house. Yeah, I love this time of year. I love autumn and winter. I just prefer being able to wrap up because I hate sweating and I hate being hot. And I may have said before, I don't mind a bit of summer. I like sunny weather and having a few weeks of summer, but I really fucking hate that we get extended periods of mugginess and it being too hot and I'm quite just a warm person in general. And I'm a sweater. I sweat doing anything. So I hate being uncomfortably hot. I would prefer it to be less than 10 degrees for most of the year. And just wrap up in a hoodie, hat, gloves. I'm cool with it. I don't think I'd ever get bored of it, to be honest. So it was kind of cold this morning, but it's warming up now because this is what happens. The sun gets high and it starts to cook the land below. And my office gets really fucking hot because the sun, it's a south-facing garden, so the sun is now blasting against my office window. And it's already really warm in here. And by the time I usually finish these podcasts, I'm sweating my tits off. So I'm ready for it to be cold. October is here. Halloween's coming up. We're doing Halloween decorating the house today. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to play some scary games. For those that don't know, me and my buddy Steve on First Aid Spray, we are both a part of the jury for the Horror Video Game Awards, which is now in its third year. Where we get to nominate our favourite horror games, and I need to play a few more. I haven't really played many horror games this year. There's always tons of indie horror games that come out, which is great. I mean, I can't afford to buy them all. I can't afford to play them all. So I play what I can. But I think the Horror Game Awards nominations are next month. So yeah, I'll spend some time in October catching up on a few horror games. Crow Country is kind of sitting at top of the list, I think, for horror game of the year. Even though I talked about that on this show earlier in the year, where I said it's not that scary. I think I called it Baby's First Survival Horror. It's still an awesome game, an actually awesome game. So that's sitting up there. But I'm going to try a few more. Steve's recommended some to me as well. But yeah, I love this time of year where you can just... The nights are actually dark, it's not still light at 10 o'clock at night. I hate that shit. So yeah, ready to go for Halloween in October. This episode of Gaming Aroma, there wasn't a great deal of news. There was a big bit of news that got me thinking about a topic which I was maybe going to do a special episode on this topic in the future, but I thought I'd talk about it this week instead. And that was the shutting down of Play magazine. Now, when I heard this news, I thought, oh, Play magazine. I used to get that. Play magazine to me, or Play UK, was a PlayStation magazine that I bought in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And apparently Play magazine, owned by Imagine Publishing, ran from 1995 and finished in 2016. But when Future, this is another publishing company, acquired Imagine Publishing, the Play brand was resurrected and used as a replacement for the PlayStation Official Magazine UK, which was a different magazine. So I read this and I thought, I thought Play had shut down years ago. And so technically it had, but Play in its current form was actually a rebrand of the resurrected PlayStation Official Magazine. So it's a bit confusing. PlayStation Official Magazine UK, which is a magazine that I remember the official one being the more expensive one. And so the reason I would buy Play is because it was maybe like a quid cheaper or something like that. But the official PlayStation magazine, apparently, so this launched in November 1995 as well. It ran for 108 issues and then finished in 2004. So there was no official PlayStation magazine between 2004 and 2006. So yeah, it came back in 2006. So there was a couple of years where it wasn't being published, but Play was being published. So yeah, it's getting really confusing. But so official PlayStation magazine and Play were effectively both under the umbrella of Future Publishing. So when Future bought Imagine, who used to publish Play, Future republished PlayStation Official Magazine, which they were already publishing. They rebranded it using the Play name. I'm not sure why. I'm sure if I look into it, I'd like to find out a bit more about why this happened. But it is confusing because there's like 2 iterations of Official PlayStation Magazine and 2 iterations of Play. But the second iteration of Play is a resurrected Official PlayStation Magazine. Does any of that make any sense? Probably not. But basically, yes, the news came that this was shut down. And I wanted to talk about this, and I want to talk about magazines and gaming magazines. But gamesindustry.biz here. Let's see if this article makes any sense of it. One of the UK's last remaining print gaming magazines, Play, has been cancelled. In a brief statement posted to its social media feed, Play said it is with a heavy heart that it must inform readers that the next issue of the Sony-centric magazine would be the final edition. UK's official PlayStation magazine, OPM, was retired after 25 years in May 2021, with Future Publishing replacing it with Play, a new publication with the same editorial team but without the official Sony branding. Whilst rebranding saw the magazine's numbering reset, Play was the otherwise spiritual successor to OPM, made by the same team of writers, editors and designers. It ran for 4 years, bringing the OPM/Play legacy to a close after 29 years. We all love to play, but the unfortunate truth is that at some point all games must come to an end. Whether it's because you got squashed by a rolling boulder, threw the controller down in frustration, or simply hit credits. Editor Oscar Taylor Kent wrote in a longer missive on publisher Future's flagship gaming site, Games Radar Plus. That time has now come for Play as well, Taylor Kent said, adding that he'd always considered the version of the magazine and a combo. Here we go, yeah. Always considered this version of the magazine a combo of the legacies of official PlayStation magazine, PSM and Play, all prior UK gaming magazines that have shut down. He then made a special acknowledgement to the final team members Jessica Kinghorn, Miriam MacDonald and Milford Coppock, saying they have made his years across OPM and Play a breeze. So yeah, so it's shutting down, which is obviously very sad news. Hopefully that helped make clear some of the ridiculous fucking rambling I was saying at the start about what magazine was which. But yeah, so my reaction when I heard this was, oh, Play magazine. Yeah, but I thought that had closed down. It was the magazine that, as I said, it's the one I used to get. I didn't used to get the official one because it was more expensive. I was never a subscriber. I remember back in the day that like subscribing to magazines was... It just felt out of my reach. It felt too expensive. They'd always give you like cool free gifts and stuff that I really wanted to subscribe to. But buying magazines was like, I really had to save my pennies because my parents didn't really buy them. I don't know what they were back then. They don't seem to have increased too much in price. Like these days, like a new issue of Retro Gamer. Let's have a look. I got some here. Now, this is the subscribers edition of Retro Gamer, so of course it's not going to have the price on. Where's my other one? Here we go. So like a new issue of Retro Gamer right now, which obviously is a glossy magazine, very similar to this sort of stuff that we're talking about, is £5.40, which I don't think is much more expensive than what they used to be. I'm sure these magazines used to always be in the realm of £3.50, £3.99. So to go up like a couple of quid doesn't seem bad at all. Some magazines, like my wife's really into gardening, and I've tried to pick up a couple of gardening magazines for her before. They go for like £8.99, and these are for non-special issues as well, because you do a lot of, and Retro Gamer do this and Future do this, where they do these one-off like special feature magazines, like just on Nintendo or just on a special subject or whatever. And they will be more expensive, and they're generally thicker, and they come with something extra, so that's fine. But yeah, like the monthly gardening magazine is like £8. So yeah, but £5.40 for an issue of Retro Gamer today, I think is extremely reasonable, like shockingly reasonable, to be honest. Considering the quality of the magazine, the quality of Retro Gamer is superb. And I'll talk about Retro Gamer more in a bit. But yeah, I remember wanting to buy a gaming magazine back in the day was always like, there was no internet. So if you wanted your gaming news or there was internet, but I certainly didn't have access to it, and it was crap. So if you wanted your gaming news, you had to buy a magazine. That was the place to go for the reviews, for news, features, for cheats, walkthroughs, all this kind of stuff. Here we go. So I've just picked up one of my old magazines. So here's my... and if you listen to First Aid Spray, you might have heard me talk about this. This is my prized copy of PlayStation Solutions. And a shout out to my friend Lou, who helped me track this down a few years back. This is a magazine from... Well, it's got Resident Evil 2 on the cover, and it was a walkthrough for Resident Evil 2. So it came out in 1998. What's funny is on the inside bar here, it's got everyone's email addresses to contact them. So obviously that was starting to become a thing. But yeah, so £3.95 this magazine was, and if you think the new Retro Gamer is £5.40, that's not a big jump considering how everything else has jumped up in price. But yeah, back in the day, this is where I got my news from. This is where I got everything from. I specifically remember trying to buy a copy of Play magazine once. I was with my brother, and we were outside Tesco's, and we had like literally pennies, like 20p's and pennies and 2p's that we'd been saving up throughout a couple of weeks, like that we'd just find or get from some of my dad's change or something like that. And I remember the magazine probably costing about £3.50 or £3.99, and we desperately wanted it. And we were counting our pennies on the floor outside of Tesco's. And I swear to you, some angel of an old lady walked up and said, "Oh, what are you boys doing?" I must have been like 9 years old when this happened. What are you boys doing? And I remember telling her that we were counting our money to see if we had enough to buy a magazine, but we didn't. And she was like, "Oh, well, I think I've got some change that can help you out." And she literally emptied her purse onto the floor of this, waterfall of change just fell onto the floor, onto our pile. And I think we probably ended up with about £6 or £7. And she was like, and that was it. She was just like, "Have a nice day," and walked off. And you think in your mind, like, was this lady crazy? Like, no, I think she was just trying to get rid of some change. Nobody likes carrying loads of change around, even back in the day. She saw some two young lads, two strapping young 9-year-olds, 9 or a 9 and a 7-year-old. I thought, "Here you go, you can have my change," because she didn't need it. And I remember it gave us enough to buy the magazine and like some sweets and a drink and stuff. And that moment has stuck with me since then. So we're talking like, that's like 30 years ago now. And yeah, that was that was my life of getting magazines. I didn't get them every month. It was few and far between, but I fucking loved buying gaming magazines. And Play specifically is one that I used to get because we had a PlayStation. I wasn't really a Nintendo kid. We had a NES first. That's like the first thing we had in the 1990 or something like that. but there was no buying Nintendo magazines, and I wasn't as kind of hard into games or anything like that because I was so young. When the Mega Drive and the PlayStation came along, it was like, yep, we were Mega Drive kids, and then the PlayStation came along, and I definitely bought a few Mega Drive magazines. I have vague memories of that, but not loads. I say I bought, or would have begged my mum to buy me some. But the PlayStation era, PS1 era, is when buying magazines really became a thing that myself and my friends would be doing, and I'd be borrowing magazines and be reading magazines around their house, and they'd be reading them around my house. Yeah, and Play Magazine was definitely a big one of that, a big part of it. I do not have any copies anymore. Like, I just mentioned my old copy of PlayStation Solutions here, and like buying old magazines off eBay is something I do like to do now. Like, for a few reasons, like reasons, like historical reasons as well. Lots of this stuff that doesn't exist online. Like, some magazines have been scanned and archived online, but not all of them. So buying an old physical copy of a magazine is the only way to kind of get some unique perspective, or get some insight into the perspectives at the time, whether that's reviews or news and the stuff that was going on in the industry. Like, some interviews are exclusive to magazines that you just can't get anywhere else online, so they are like a valuable piece of history. And to hear that a physical version of a magazine is shutting down, Play, formerly PlayStation Magazine, formerly Play, is shutting down completely. There doesn't seem to be any news that it's going to continue as a digital-only subscription. Digital magazines are a funny one. They're a hard one to get right. I think they can work really good for local news and small knit communities, but on a broad scale, it's a lot of effort for something that you email out to people, and that's generally not the way to reach them. So I'm sad to hear that Play Magazine is shutting down, because it is a sign of the times. This week also Total Film shut down. So I'm going to make sure that I go out and I buy both copies of these magazines. Total Film is another one, very similar, where if you think, okay, Empire Magazine is like the big film magazine. That's the main one. I think that's always been the main one in the UK. And I definitely bought a lot of Empire magazines, but Total Film was, I believe, the slightly cheaper one. I think Total Film was understood to be the kind of cooler one as well, that was less mainstream, in the way that like Edge magazine for video games is a cool magazine and sort of very well respected. I feel like Total Film is maybe not quite so much like Edge, but in that sort of thing. Like, of the film magazines, that was its place. At least that's how I felt, growing up with it. So yeah, it's a sign of the times that magazines are a dying breed. There are still loads of magazines. Like, you go into the supermarket or you go into WH Smith, there's seriously fucking loads of magazines. It's not like you go to find the physical like Blu-rays or DVDs and there's like none. Like, I don't even think you can buy physical Blu-rays and DVDs from WH Smith anymore. But magazines, WH Smith as a newsagents, there's still loads of them there. And obviously they're being kept in business because the gardening magazines cost like nearly a tenner. But I love going into WH Smith's and having a look. Like, there's like 4 or 5 wrestling magazines now. I've got a few copies of wrestling magazines that I've bought in the past few years where I was back into wrestling. So they are still going. From what I understand, it is a massively expensive undertaking. Like, just the costs of print and paper and inks alone are like a huge suck on these magazines. I think the people that work for them don't get paid a lot of money at all. But, if you have a decent brand and maybe you've got some digital content online to go with it, you can make it work. But obviously Future I don't know if Total Film is published by Future, is it? I think Empire is the one published by Future. Whoops. Excuse me. No, Total Film is published by Future as well. So Future, obviously, for those that don't know, they're a publishing company, like media company they're actually based in Bath, where I used to work. And I used to dream of working at Future. Like, as I mentioned, the magazines that I loved. I'm pretty sure I applied for a couple of jobs there, like back in 2007, 2008, maybe 2009. They were jobs that I had nowhere near the qualifications or experience for. But I was like, I just wanted to get in. And I remember writing my cover letters, and this would have been a physical application as well. Although you could apply for stuff online, in the mid to late 2000s, I'm sure the jobs I were applying for, they were still encouraging you to send a CV and a printed letter to an address with an application form that you had to download and print. And I remember doing that, and I remember putting in my cover letter that I live in Dorset. I'm desperate to move from Dorset. Really want to get my start in the media business, the media industry. I love magazines. Would love to do writing or get involved. Kind of putting myself out there to do anything. Never heard anything back. When I worked in Bath, when I worked at the animation studio, I did have conversations with people at Future about moving to a job there. It never materialized, and I don't know if they were just being nice to me or just trying to be friendly, because the animation studio I worked at was boutique, but we were working on really big stuff, and we had some huge contacts in the media industry and in with London agencies and stuff like that. And looking back, I feel like the people that I was speaking to were maybe fishing around and looking to see if there was something in it for them, rather than giving a job to me. But I really wanted a job. I would have moved to Future in a heartbeat. And this is before, the internet was definitely rampant, and I think maybe magazines were starting to die out, but it wasn't like it is now, and that magazines were still very much a big deal. So yeah, I never ended up getting a job at Future. What Future's future looks like now, I don't know. I mean, they do loads of other stuff. They do online content and stuff. They own fucking an endless list of stuff. Let's have a quick look at their website. So yeah, magazines, PC Gamer, Homes and Gardens. They own Go Compare. What? They actually own Go Compare. Cycling News, Country Life. We've advertised in Country Life before at work. Guitar World, Digital Camera Magazine, Tech Radar. Wow, they own Tech Radar as well. SFX, Born Different, TV and Satellite, Total Film, What's on TV, What Culture, of course, they own What Culture. Shout out to Cy from First Aid Spray. They're just they own Retro Gamer as well. Golden Joystick Awards, Edge. They actually own Edge. They own nearly all of the magazines. It's a huge operation. Maybe unmanageable these days. But they like I say, they do other stuff. They don't just do magazines. So, I forgot what my original point was. I think it was basically to say that yes, we are in different times. Total Film is shutting down as well. Go out and buy those last copies of these magazines. Just because they're going to be sort of important relics lost to time otherwise. It's very sad. I hope everybody involved with them can find their way, find a new place in the industry, perhaps move into something online, something digital. Yeah, because it's when it comes to reading magazines, I don't like the idea that stuff like this is going to go away. I think it's going to be a long time before physical magazines and newspapers and everything completely go away. Newspapers, I think, are in a worse position than magazines, that's for sure. Because newspapers are daily, and every newspaper you get is it's yesterday's news. It's that's a cliche term, but it is literally yesterday's news. And my use of the internet, and a lot of people's use of the internet, maybe your coffee in the morning or something like that, where that used to be maybe popping out and getting your newspaper or reading a newspaper on your lunch break, most people these days just hop onto their phone, hop onto social media, hop onto their news website of choice, and get their news from there, and it's up to the minute and it's live. So the thought of going out and buying a newspaper, even though they're really cheap, there's got to be something really special in it, and it's just a habit. It's a habitual thing, and a lot of sort of older people. My mum still buys a newspaper like most days, or maybe at least once a week at the weekend. My dad, every time he goes to Tesco's, he'll pick up the local Echo, because my dad doesn't use the internet, so that makes sense. But these people are not going to be around forever, and this generation isn't going to be around forever. So newspapers have it more difficult than magazines, because at least magazines are generally monthly. Some of them are bi-monthly. Some magazines are every 3 months. And they have more time to put it together, and they will often come with exclusive features, exclusive insights, and a lot of stuff that you can't get up to the minute news-wise online. The news section of a magazine is generally 2 pages, right? The latest issue of Retro Gamer I've got here, because they do news. They do, they have now. I don't know if I was to look at Play magazine, because I haven't read it for a long time, if they are more up to the minute, right? But Retro Gamer's news is Retro Radar. It's it's like 4 pages of the magazine. The rest is features, history, interviews, columns from people, a look at collecting and old reviews, stuff that was happening in the past. I guess that's why Retro Gamer has been able to succeed where the others are shutting down, because they don't have to rely on up-to-the-minute news. That's not what it's about. And it's certainly why I buy it. And, I love to get my history about gaming from Retro Gamer. I think it's really well put together. But, newspapers are up-to-the-minute news. There's no point buying it where you can just get it online straight away. Magazines, it's a bit easier for them to put a special offering together that they can charge a few quid for, that you won't get online. You can still get some of the stuff online, and as far as I'm aware, they do a digital version of Retro Gamer as well. But for me, holding the thing in your hand is still a big deal. It's still something that I prefer. I pay more attention. My eyes hurt less. I have less of a headache. I feel like we spend so much time looking at screens, and my laptop for work and at my phone. When I get to sit down with a coffee, or if I've got some time in the evening where I can sit on the sofa with my magazine, that is like, I de-stress. My stress levels come down. Like, I feel my mood increases. I feel like I'm actually learning and taking it in, because when you look at stuff on a screen, it's so passive, and unless there's a very specific reason you're hooked into it, it's very easy to click away, to look at something else, to get distracted. Like reading a book, I like audiobooks, and reading a book, though, everything's got to stop to read that book, and so you're focused and you're locked in. It's the same with magazines. So times are changing. The generation who prefer this sort of stuff, reading magazines and newspapers, they are going to die out. I think it's going to be a while before they go away completely. That's what I was trying to get to. Because you go in WH Smith, there's still loads of them. I personally know quite a few people who still like buying magazines. I have friends and podcast co-hosts who work on magazines. David and Alex both write for Sega Force Mega. Alex, and I think David did as well, previously wrote for Sega Mania, 2 magazines which I bought every issue for and love reading. Like, they're niche, they're hard. I guess they're hard to shift multiple copies of, because you've got to find that niche audience. But yeah, specialist and niche subjects, that's the way to go for these magazines. They're going to be around for a while longer because of it. But for an up-to-the-minute, news-focused magazine, where a lot of the news you're putting out is already out of date because of the websites, I could see why it's extremely difficult to make it work. But yeah. So very, very sad to see Play go. What else was I going to say? So just on Retro Game at the moment, like my habits at the moment for magazines, like I say, is generally I find myself walking, anytime I go into town, I will go into WH Smith's and I will peruse the magazines. And if one of those special edition magazines catches my eye, like something I don't do so much anymore actually is buy the music production magazines. There's a period of my life where I was heavily into music production. I've got a box in the attic of, I don't know, maybe 50 magazines of various different music production magazines with tutorials. They all came with sample discs as well. This is the other thing, like, God rest their soul, demo discs on magazines, right? I mean, that was the reason. I'm talking about the past. We all used to buy the magazines. Buying magazines would sell out. The demo discs would get stolen. You'd pick up the magazine and some twat had already stolen it, so you couldn't get the demo disc with the magazine. God, that was such, to even think about the demo disc impact on gaming culture, and just demo discs were huge. And so I would buy these music production magazines, and they all came with sample discs. And you'd have like a library of like music samples that you could use in your productions. They'd come with free plugins as well, like stuff that you couldn't get anywhere else. They'd come with demos of plugins, and it's just like, that was like every month I was buying sometimes two different music production magazines. And I've got all them in a box upstairs. I'm not throwing them away. They're still useful tools. They're basically massive they've got news and features and everything in, but there's so many tutorials and stuff that I think you can look back on in another 15 years and see how much stuff has changed. Yeah, like I used to spend a lot of money on those magazines, and my habits now are I spend less on magazines, absolutely, but I will always go into WH Smith's because they're basically the main place to get magazines. Supermarket selections are pretty dire, at least where I am, because it's not giant supermarkets. And I will have a look around at all the specialist subjects. I'll look at the camera stuff, I'll look at the gaming stuff, I'll look at the music stuff, the wrestling stuff, and very often I'll leave that shop with a magazine, because you cannot be, as I said, holding it in your hands, reading at it, not looking at a screen. It feels special, and is one of the things I buy these days where I don't feel like I'm getting ripped off, to be honest. Unless, again, I'm buying a gardening magazine, but I don't know. Maybe some of them came with 3 packs of seeds. Maybe that's the reason they cost so much. Yeah, I never... The only time I feel ripped off buying a magazine is if I buy one for my kid. The absolute god-awful range of kids' magazines out there that come with like plastic crap and toys. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're incredibly disappointing. You're looking at £6.50 to £7 for some of these kids' magazines that come with free gifts and toys, and the toys last like 30 seconds. I've definitely felt ripped off buying them. I don't read them. They're for my son, just to be clear. But yes, for the magazines that I buy for myself, I have never felt ripped off. So yeah, I encourage you, stop by and buy a magazine. Stop by your local WH Smiths or whatever, buy a magazine. You won't regret it. There's got to be a subject you like, right? There's magazines for everything. Just looking down on the floor here, I was going to do some content for this, but I actually, didn't end up doing it. It's recently the 20-year anniversary of Lost, and I have every single Lost magazine. So there's the official Lost magazine. You remember in the 2000s when TV shows would produce companion magazines, and they were generally for what I would describe as, I think they were generally aimed at teen girls, right? So things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dawson's Creek and stuff like that. The X-Files used to do one, but I think that was a bit before. Like, I loved the X-Files as a kid, but getting the magazine was kind of before my time. The Lost magazine, I remember buying a few issues back at the time, but a few years ago I went and bought the whole collection off eBay. I got a super good deal. It cost me 30 quid to get like 50 magazines, maybe more, which included some special edition ones as well. And just flicking through that, it's it's so funny reading it from the perspective of the mid 2000s and how this magazine was written. Some of it is really shoddy and ropey, but there's exclusive interviews in there, exclusive photos that I'm a Lost hardcore fan. Like, I know everything there is to know about Lost. I've watched like every interview with all the cast, like all the people who make the show. I am that sad, right? But this magazine has pictures that I know are not in any of the other books or stuff and haven't appeared anywhere online. There's tons of exclusive stuff in these magazines. Every single issue is in a like a plastic cover thing because I want to keep them forever. Pass them down to my son, who will probably be living in a post-apocalyptic world and will use them like as fuel for the fire to keep warm. Anyway, yeah, magazines, man. What was I going to say? Yeah, I was going to do some content for that, but I just haven't got any time because I've got all those magazines sitting there and it feels like they're kind of going to waste. But yeah, my habits now. So retro game in the past few years, I haven't bought every single month. I'll generally just buy if the cover feature really intrigues me. But for this year, my wife did buy me a subscription. So for the first time ever, I am a subscriber, but through my wife. And so the last 3 months, my subscription covers have come in, which is lovely. You get a nice exclusive cover. Although it's funny, the PSP one that I've got from a few months ago, holding it in my hands now, the photo on the cover is awesome. But I saw the non-subscriber cover and I thought it was better. And so I nearly had the subscriber issue and nearly bought the non-subscriber issue. And kind of similar for this month's, which has got Ridge Racer on the cover. The non-subscriber cover I sort of prefer. So yeah, so they're enticing me to double dip. Oh, retro gamer. PSP best handheld of all time, by the way. That's definitely going to be one of my focus episodes in the near future. But yes, so I am getting Retro Gamer every month now, and I don't read it all in one go. With my magazines, generally, I will sit down and I will read a few pages, and then read a few pages a couple of days later. And I make it last throughout the month. I quite like that. Just dip in and out when I can. Yeah, so to round that up, I suppose, I think magazines are going to be around for a while longer, but it will just be these specialist niche topics and niche subjects. But yeah, print ain't dead yet. I do love print. I do love a good magazine. And rest in peace to Play, and rest in peace to Total Film as well. So looking forward to picking up the 2 latest issues of that and saying goodbye, raising a glass, raising a coffee as I read those. And I haven't even got a fucking PlayStation. As listeners will know, I have the old PlayStation. So I have a PS1, PS2, No, I don't have a PS1. I have a PS2, PS3. Oh, 3 PSPs, a PS Vita. Oh. Yeah, no PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 for me yet. That's kind of it. Like, I just wanted to jump on and talk about the magazine stuff. News-wise, it's been a slow week. I just saw this morning that Halo Infinite is getting a third-person mode, which is fucking brilliant. Like, I love Halo as first-person, but something about experiencing it in third-person, you can see why they're doing it, because, you know, the biggest multiplayer shooter in the world that isn't Call of Duty is a third-person game, and that's Fortnite. So maybe they're trying to bring in those people, I suppose. But yeah, I'm fine for Halo trying something different. It's good for accessibility as well, so no complaints there. But yes, the other big news is that the Silent Hill 2 remake, the reviews have dropped, proving the doubters wrong. Now, Bloober Team, loads of people shit on Bloober Team. I never really understood the hate. I'm one of the freaks out there that really liked The Medium, and I stand by that. And I think if you go and look at my tweet at the time that The Medium came out, I tweeted in saying, this team could make a Silent Hill game. They've proved it with The Medium. It had the Silent Hill vibes. It was just, the Medium wasn't perfect, but it was I didn't even pay for it because it was on Game Pass, because it was a Xbox exclusive for a while. So the fact that I didn't pay for it helped. But it was, as an interactive, sort of immersive, light gameplay horror experience, I thought it was great, really great. And they nailed that Silent Hill weirdness and freakiness. And I said at the time, this is like a new Silent Hill. And so the team could do this. And they've done it. So that's obviously why, like, it was handed to Bloober. I can't get excited about it, though, because it's exclusive to PlayStation for a year. So now there's actually no guarantee that it's coming to Xbox yet. I think it's just that's the contract for now, that it's exclusive to PlayStation for a year. I'm sure it will come to Xbox, but yeah, everybody's getting hyped and excited about Silent Hill 2 remake. I can't jump on board, I'm afraid. I just can't, because I have no way to play it. I have no way to access it. What else was I going to say? No, and what I will say on it, because I've seen the reviews. I've seen the 10 out of 10s, the 9 out of 10s, the 4 out of 5s, the 5 out of 5s. I've seen them. I've also seen some people playing the game. And I fucking tell you now, that game, Silent Hill 2 Remake, I was watching it. It plays exactly the same as Alone in the Dark from earlier in the year. Like, exactly the same. And Alone in the Dark got slated for its gameplay. I mean, slated. I really liked that Alone in the Dark remake. I think it was massively hard. I've talked about it on this podcast. Go back and listen. Some of the reviews for that Alone in the Dark remake were insanely harsh and unfair. It was a very solid game. If you put the time into it, it wasn't even that long, but it was very throwback survival horror, puzzles, reading files. The atmosphere was great. The performances were fine. Like that, I think that was my big criticism, was that they'd hired these two big movie stars to be the main characters, and they didn't bring movie star quality to the roles. It felt like, yeah, just sort of another day at the office for them. So that definitely didn't help it. But as a game itself, it was perfectly fine. And yeah, I'm watching this Silent Hill 2 footage, and I'm like, this is Alone in the Dark. So obviously the Silent Hill 2 is enhancing the reviews, is enhancing people's opinions of it, which it will, because, you know, there's nostalgia and there's stuff like that. So fair play to Bloober for not completely fucking it up. But yeah, even earlier in the year when I saw the trailers, I was like, big Alone in the Dark vibes to that. It's just looks like the same sort of game. And seeing some extended gameplay of it now, yes, it is. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just pointing out I really want to play Silent Hill 2. It looks great. I'm just pointing out the irony, I suppose, that a game which came out earlier in the year, which looks nearly identical, for some reason, everyone shit all over that. But this remake, PlayStation exclusive, everybody loves. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, that's kind of it for news. There's a few other things, nothing that really caught my attention massively. I'm going to wrap it up soon. I don't have a huge gameplay section because all I'm really playing, or all I've been playing since the previous episode, is Shattered Space. The Shattered Space Starfield DLC is out. I haven't finished it yet. And obviously I'm going to be saving my thoughts and my deep dive for Starfield Sandwich, where Eric and I will do a nice long chat about that. I suppose one thing I will say, because you know I love to talk, is I've seen the very mixed to negative response to it, most of which I just can't get on board. I've seen some really shockingly bad takes. You know, the Xbox hate, the Starfield hate has reared its head once again. I play a lot of video games, and I've played a lot of video games for 30 plus years, and people just outright calling this bad and saying it plays bad and it's boring. It's just like, I don't know what these people are looking for. I really, really don't. Yeah, I'm going to get into it more on Starfield Sandwich, because it's just kind of baffling. Like, I think at this point, if you don't like something like Starfield or Shattered Space, it's a taste thing. It's down to you not being invested in the genre, the style, and the Bethesda flavor, because that's what it is. Which I get, because there's a lot of new stuff out there. There's, the From Softwares, the Cyberpunk games, the Baldur's Gates of the world and stuff, which everybody loves. That's not Bethesda, and that's not what they put out. They do their thing in a very unique way, in ways that they do stuff in their games that other people don't, and that's the stuff that I play their games for. I don't play it for the photorealistic character models. So yeah. I think the people really hating it just want something else. And it's like, cool, just go play something else. So, but it's a shame that a lot of the, big time people like on YouTube and stuff just calling it outright trash. And there's some disingenuous takes that I've seen from some of the people out there where they say it's short. It's not short. I've been playing for nearly 8 hours and I haven't finished it yet. So what constitutes as short? I finished Star Wars Outlaws in 14 hours. I finished Assassin's Creed Mirage in 10 hours. So, yeah. It is one location. It's not got as many locations as those other games, I suppose. But I don't know. I'm going to get into it more on Starfield Sandwich. But I love Starfield, and I think the DLC is really good so far. Not perfect, but really, really good. And I'm going to leave it there. So, like I say, not any other news today, no other gameplay, but I will be back next week. Hopefully, I'll have played some other scary games. I'll have some spooky stuff to talk about as we lead into Halloween. Alan Wake 2 DLC, that's coming this month. Yes, excited for that. The Lake House. The Until Dawn remake came out for PlayStation as well. If you're a PlayStation user, I have no way to play that, obviously. But yeah, Diablo 4 expansion, I might dip into that. But yeah, I'm all focused on Shattered Space. It's probably going to take me another couple of evenings to finish it. Until then, let me know what you think of gaming magazines. Do you buy gaming magazines? Are you sad about Play? Do you think that they just need to get with the times and go digital? Comment on the podcast, comment on YouTube, let me know what you think. Message me, let me know in person. I know some of my friends listen to this podcast. And until next time, stay safe. Bye. Bye.